All right, so it's great to be with you for day 2. Just a reminder that you can keep your video on or you can let your video be off. It's all up to you. Just whatever your comfort is for both the reflection and meditation. This is for you, for your journey, for your inward journey. So I'm here to support and facilitate that. And I'm psyched that we have a good 43 people participating this year. It's the 4th annual Advent meditation series. I'm going to jump right in. So the topic is ever ancient, ever new. And of course, the phrase is a paradoxical phrase. But I'd like to read the quote that I took this from. There are many authors that use this phrasing, but I want to read the quote from Augustine where I took this first line from. Late have I loved you, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside. And it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, I plunged into the lovely things which you created. You were with me, but I was not with you. Created things kept me from you. Yet, if they had not been in you, they would not have been at all. You called, you shouted, and you broke my deafness. You flashed, you shone, and you dispelled my blindness. You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. I have tasted you, and now I hunger and thirst for more. You touched me, and I burned for your peace. This translation, there are many translations. This one is rather poetic. And a translation I actually like a little bit better, but has less diversity than this one, says that I went out looking for you in every direction, and then you shouted and shattered my deafness, and I learned you were already always within. And so what's referred to here is that there's some element within this human being, some element that is the ever ancient, ever new. And in this call that we have in becoming whole and self-realizing, there's the use of the word new or renew, right? They both exist. And I don't want to get heady and make it abstract and based on semantics. But I'd like to point to something that's pretty penetrating about this, is that even when we talk about renewal, let's say we've depleted our energy and we need to renew our energy. Even when we talk about doing something or being renewed, there is something that is a new life about that. It happens on a very practical level, right? Because we know our bodies are constantly generating new cells, maybe same patterns because we look similar, but new cells. And that happens as well on the emotional, psychological, mental, and spiritual levels as well. So it's worth taking a look then of if renewal is in a way new life, what might be an adequate image of what we're talking about when we are being called to embody the ever ancient, ever new, when we're opening ourselves to be that, to become that. I like the image of a plant for this, in this case. In other talks, I might use something different, but what I'm thinking about, I think about my niece planting little seeds to create bean sprouts. And I looked at that and well, if you plant the one seed and the bean sprout is emerging through the soil and coming up, you have a new plant coming from that seed. And then you plant a second seed, and then a plant comes from that, and you have a new plant. Now, how are the two plants related? Well, they're both bean plants. They both come from the same types of seeds. I wonder if our renewal is something like being a brand new bean plant, so that we are the one plant and we actually transform in such a way that we're recognizable because of our species, but not recognizable because we are so new, we are a new plant. That seems quite radical to entertain, but I'd like to throw it out there as a possibility to entertain when you talk about opening for yourself to new life, that there's an aspect of you that stays the same, but there's an aspect of you that becomes utterly new. I remember when I was in the monastery, and I was there for 10 and a half years, and we were living in silence, but you had other ways of communication that open up the psychic pathways and the intuitive pathways. It didn't feel like silence. But I could always tell, and I think everyone else could too, when one of my sisters was going through some big change, like a metamorphosis. You could see it in the face. There would be this way it was like a caterpillar that had moved into the cocoon, and it's like you couldn't see the caterpillar, you couldn't see the sister that you were seeing, and yet you couldn't see what that sister was becoming, the butterfly, either. You could tell they were in that cocoon, that transforming stage. And then when they would come through on the other side, they would look like a different person, like really like a different person, maybe the same color of eyes, but everything else, the face, the countenance, everything had shifted. When we grow, when we're on the path spiritually, we are urged and encouraged to see that this radical changeability of our being is normative, that is what is to be expected. And therefore, we want to set up the conditions so that we first are okay with that, and we don't try to look the way we used to look. And I mean that in attitude and interiority as well as countenance. And second, that we find ourselves in the supportive atmosphere. It is very often when we stay within groups, any group, a friendship group, where there is a set of mores and expectations, it can be difficult to allow for the level of change that self-realizing demands. And yet we remain with attention until we give our full yes to that level of transformation. So it's interesting. There's not a lot of black and whites, but there is something all-consuming about giving the yes to our total transformation. I have a line from a parable that's attributed to Jesus that you've probably heard. It's been used in many cultures, but I'm going to go ahead and pull that quote up. New wine, if it were to be put into old wineskins, would burst, and the wine would be spilled, and the skins would be ruined. New wine must be put in fresh wineskins, so both are preserved. Now, could it be possible for you and I to take that seriously, to see that on the soul level, we come into this life to shape-shift as we awaken into the fullness of what we are? And if it's so, if that's true, how can we offer support for that? How can we offer the freedom, so that we have the flexibility to change, to let go quickly of what's meant to be let go of, to stay steadfast in what's meant to be stayed steadfast in. It was one of the things I loved about being in monastic life in silence, because I thought here would be a place where my only limitations would be me, because I'd be in silence. Nobody would be telling me what to think, what to feel, what to do. And there wouldn't be the enculturation to the degree that we have it in society. It exists in the monastery for sure, but not from every direction and every stimulation point for ourselves. And that phrase, what's very interesting about that phrase that's pulled out of that Christian text, that New and Old Wineskin text, that phrase is couched in a larger paragraph that I want to point to, but not get into here because it would take too long, but it's worthy of seeding the ground. That is part of what's attributed in Jesus's words as a response to his followers asking if they should fast like the Pharisees fast. So the people that were with him at that moment, who knows who it was, if it was a big group or a little group, it could have been 3 people. Who knows who they were, but what we do know is that they weren't following whatever this group, the Pharisees, was doing. And they wanted to know if they should be doing that. And Jesus gives this very mysterious response that ends in that phrase about the wineskins. And the response is, no one fasts when they're with the bridegroom. They fast when the bridegroom has left. I am with you. We are together now. There's no reason to fast. We're having the banquet. But when we're not together, that is the time to fast. And he ends it with that parable of the wineskins. So it seeds the ground here with, we could go many directions, but one insight that was coming to me was, if the wineskins relates to that, then what we're called to in order to be the new wineskin, in order to have the new life, is to let our discernment be much more penetrating, moving away from the rules and the practices, and allowing any practices in our lives to always be so alive that they're at the service of our awakening in the moment. And it takes energy and courage to do that, doesn't it? And it takes the willingness to, not in a way that dismantles your stability, but it takes a diligence to allow the question to be alive, to look right now. Are all of the practices that are a part of my life right now, are they alive for me? Are they alive for me? Am I resonating and vibrating with the ever new, ever ancient quality of my being as the practice is happening? And if so, then we know it's alive for us. And if not, we know that we can let it go. And the letting go does not have to be this grand gesture. I let it go for the rest of my life. Those are false securities, I think. It can be, I let it go now because it's not alive now. That may evoke fear, because it could lead you or me to say, well, what can I count on? If I can't count on my practices to be it. But what it does is it pulls back the veil so you discover there is the source within me, ever beckoning union. Every moment, every breath, like the more poetic version of Augustine's, the breath, the fragrance, the voice, the being touched, all the senses are evoked, and that we can count on. So we're invited here to say yes with the courage, to develop the skillfulness, to be that dynamic in our discernment of our practices. So today's practice is going to be one using the faculty that we all have called observation. Now, I love all the forms of meditation practices, and I utilize the faculty of observation in a diverse and manifold way, because observation is simply an entry point to presence. You will find in schools that utilize observation, like the mindfulness movement, MBSR, all the way to the richer practices that are contained within Buddhism and the many lineages there, which are most known to us. I could quote more. You will find a highly developed form of the use of observation itself. What I introduce in my meditation practices is diverse forms of the use of the faculty. The afterflow of the use of observation we can take at other times, but here I want to show that the observation can be used as an entry point to presence in many different ways. And here our focus today is touching and being touched by the ever ancient, ever new, so that our renewal is a new life, that we become the new wineskin. We become the new bean plant. We become the new Kimberly. Substitute your name in there. That we become that in a way that we come home with recognition and we are unrecognizable. That's so powerful, right? So how we're going to use the observation today is very simple, and it may be unique to you. I'm not going to make a judgment either way. We are going to use the observation like a bit of a call and a response. You're going to let your ears hear words that I am going to speak from a mystic writing from Kabir, a lovely, lovely, lovely inspired human being. You're going to let your ears hear that, but you're going to allow your faculty of observation to be turned inward upon the body. So you're not turning the observation towards the words or towards anything else. You're turning the observation upon the body. And as the ears presence the words, you're going to observe, you're going to notice without judgment what's happening within the body. You're communing with the body, but the body reveals what's alive for you. So I'm going to read the passage twice, and in that you're going to notice what's happening with the body. Allow everything. Don't just notice what feels great. Allow anything that's happening. After the second reading, what I'm going to do is give you a space of silence to focus in on one response the body had to what was read, whatever it may be. It could be palpitation, it could be a feeling of heaviness, it could be joy, it could be grief, it could be distraction, it could be lethargy, it could be a full radiation, it could be that your left eye hurts. There's nothing wrong here. So, and then what I'm going to do is after that silence, you're going to let yourself be with that one response that you have chosen, and you're going to be there in your body, nose, heart, presence of the etheric field, left eye, palpitations, right foot, whatever it might be. Be there with where the strong response came. And then I'm going to read the passage a third time. And in that observation, you're going to notice what word or phrase is evoking the response of the body. And then we'll end our meditation practice. And your going forward will be to stick with that word or phrase. because that's where the life is. That's where the new life is. All right. So I invite you to close your eyes. And we've already seeded the land through the words I've read that are so inspiring, through the presence that you yourself have brought to this gathering. And the you that has brought you here has in heart and intention and in mind one desire, and that is communion, union, fullness. So establish the stance as you know best, to open yourself to hear without grabbing for words, to hear. And keep the inward gaze upon the body. It's like the words or a falling rain, and you don't notice every raindrop, but you do notice your body's response. Keep the observation upon the response. From our friend and brother Kabir, the moon shines in my body, but my blind eyes cannot see it. The moon is within me, and so is the sun. The unstruck drum of eternity is sounded within me, but my deaf ears cannot hear it. So long as I clamor for the I and the mine, the eternal works are as naught. When all love of the I and the mine is released, then the work of the eternal within me is done. For the work has no other aim than the getting of this knowing. When that comes, the work is put away. The flower blooms for the fruit. When the fruit comes, the flower withers. The musk is in the deer, but it seeks it not within itself. It wanders in quest of grass. Letting the body lead, letting the observation follow, letting the ears hear an insightful word. Once again, allow. The moon shines in my body, but my blind eye cannot see it. The moon is within me, and so is the sun. The unstruck drum of eternity is sounded within me, but my deaf ears cannot hear it. So long as I clamor for the I and the mine, the eternal works are as naught. When all love of the I and the mine is released, then the work of the eternal within me is done. For work has no other aim than the getting of this knowing. When that comes, the work is put away. The flower blooms for the fruit. When the fruit comes, the flower withers. The musk is in the deer, but it seeks it not within itself. It wanders in quest of grass. And we sit in a few moments of silence so that your body can reveal what is moving most, what part of your body is calling for your attention. And now, bring your focus to the one part of you that is calling your attention. As I repeat the words a third time, and notice where this part of you comes most alive. That is the word or phrase that is alive for you today. The moon shines in my body, but my blind eyes cannot see it. The moon is within me, and so is the sun. The unstruck drums of eternity is sounded within me, but my deaf ears cannot hear it. So long as I clamor for the I and the mine, the eternal works are as naught. When all love of the I and the mine are released, then the work of the eternal within me is done. For this work has no other aim than the getting of this knowing. When that comes, the work is put away. The flower blooms for the fruit. When the fruit comes, the flower withers. The musk is in the deer, but it seeks it not within itself. It wanders in quest of grass. And be present with the word or phrase that's most alive. Let your body form an inward smile to be given such a gift. And now, in order to ground yourself in moving forward from this short meditation, I invite you to wiggle your toes. And wiggle the fingers. As you open your eyes, keep the eyes downcast. Notice any way that you feel just a little different. And then raise the eyes with joy. Great to be with you for day 2. Blessings, my friends. Take that phrase with you.